we went a little bit different on the starting soon screen this week. Mexico, Chinese Taipei, IHF Women's Under 18 Worlds. I can't remember what division this is actually. What division is this? What division is this? I think it's Div 3. I'm pretty certain it's Div 3. Let's all scroll down together and we'll double check. Div 2. 2A. 2A. There we go. Either way, we'll click the button. There we go. We'll click the button and get past all that bit. What I will do is I will press some buttons and get rid of all that lot. There we are. Hello. We'll give everybody another minute or two to just quickly pop in. We're just gonna, like I said, we're just checking, making sure everything is whittling away. Though I have seen some very, very exciting news given what's going on at the moment. There we go. Yes, that all looks very, very good fun. But let's make sure, like I said, let's get people in. Let's get people rocking and rolling. There we are. Well, we've hit that point anyway, so I think I'm just going to edge that forward just a smidgen there, just because that looks much better. It doesn't have quite as much light shining off my head. Guys, gals, and the gender fluid and all beyond the binary, it is Wednesday night, it is 8 PM, and welcome back once again to the BOTW What's Current stream. My name is Anthony Russell, and we are here to go through, well, there isn't much of it left, but there's a fair bit that's still going on across the various divisions of the National Ice Hockey League. We focus on the National Division. That is our bread and butter. That is our home port. But of course, we will make a point of going through absolutely everything we can, whether it's the National Division, Division 1 or Division 2 in the north or in the south. I hope everybody is doing all right. I see there's one sad person in the chat already. But that's for somewhat understandable reasons there, because they're an MK fan and they probably are a little bit upset after this weekend. And there's some questions I think probably to be made about MK as well. Either way, hi everyone, Anthony here once again. It's Wednesday night as we edge ever closer towards the end of the British hockey season. Lots of stuff going on, lots of stuff happened last weekend. A massive weekend, of course. The National Division Playoff Quarterfinals have happened. We have our Final Four for Coventry. The Final Four weekends for North 1 and South 1 have happened as well. South 2 is officially gone to bed. That is already into its summer break, but North 2 still noodling away with their cup final, of course, and we've had the first leg of that this last weekend. So we're going to go and have a chat about a few bits and pieces, and of course, Basingstoke still kind of on the agenda for a few, and so we will of course touch on that as well. However, before we go too deep into anything, we're of course live here on YouTube throughout the season, 8 PM on Wednesday nights. If you haven't already, do make sure to pop down, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so that you're notified whenever the stream kind of goes live, although it is pretty much always the same time every Wednesday, but do that anyway. And if you are watching live, or if you are watching after the fact even, do make sure to share the stream on your preferred social media. Twitter, Facebook, Mastodon, Instagram, maybe not Truth Social because no, just no. But if you are watching live, please do go and share the stream out really quickly. It'd be massively appreciated because with the National Ice Hockey League season coming to its conclusion, more people we can get kind of looking at bits and pieces from BOTW, that'd be appreciated. The other thing, of course, is the website, bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, 12 years worth of basic advice and stuff that has kind of come to a pause, and I'll be announcing kind of what the pivot is from there in due time. But of course, we focus on stuff to do with the National Division, and there is our Hockey Stories series, which is kind of long-form pieces of content from across hockey's history. We talk to players, we talk to referees, coaches, we go back into history. We've gone through both world wars in pieces. The formations of bits and pieces behind the Iron Curtain up to the very present day, and discussions about things like the place of like content creation within hockey as well. We've got Dice Hockey, which is our free to download tabletop ice hockey game that you can get there as well, and the back catalogue of the old BOTW podcast. A ton of stuff over there at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. The other thing as well, and I'll plug this very quickly at the start here before we start, if you are a regular reader of stuff at Banners on the Wall and you like what I do, I'll just very quickly plug Halb Vier magazine. Halb Vier is a German football German football sort of culture magazine, English language. So it's about all English language stuff about German football. And your boy is back in issue 12. It's a special edition issue. This one, all about football in Berlin. I'm in there writing about Berlin football just after the end of World War II. So even though the city was divided, there was only one football league in Berlin at the time. If you like your sports writing, if you like like kind of getting into sort of the nitty gritty of particular countries' football cultures, Halbvier, HALBVIER.bigcartel.co.uk. Make sure to pop over, get yourself the latest copy of that. Yes, I'm in it, but there's a bunch of other really, really excellent people in it as well. Chris Lee is a really, really good football writer. He's written about football fighting fascism and stuff like that. There's some other really, really good stuff in here as well. Stuff about Friedrichshain Internationale, Friedrichstadt moving from behind the Iron Curtain to all go play for Hertha Berlin. Stuff about the Stasi and Dynamo Berlin. Lots of great stuff there, so do go check that out if you haven't had the opportunity. And if you like my writing, go buy stuff I do, because it's nice to get supported, I suppose. Either way, back to the hockey, which is kind of what we're here to do. And well, if you haven't read it already, it went out first thing this morning over at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, which is, for the moment at any rate, for after 12 years, having to put a pause on Running with the Herd. So Running with the Herd is the series that I did. Any Bison game I ever watched with my own eyes, whether it was home, whether it was away, went under that sort of title, and my sort of match write-up would go under that Running with the Herd banner. And you got some back in the start of Banners on the Wall, it was very much more kind of sort of traditional match write-up, and the longer time's gone on, it became much more analytical. And obviously the situation in Basingstoke over the last week or so has been kind of necessitated that I got to kind of put a pause on that for the time being. And so this week's one is the last game for the Basingstoke Bison at the moment, as far as we're aware, until September of 2024, which was a very surreal moment to write. It took longer to think about than to write this one. I think I wrote the whole piece in about just over an hour. I was quite quick at kind of getting it out, maybe somewhere between an hour and 90 minutes. But I think actually the hardest part of this was actually pressing the button to say, to say bits, to actually say anything about it. The other thing I've forgotten, of course, about that I was saying, I realised I'm talking a lot. I've forgotten entirely about the chat function down there. So silly me. Questions, comments, anything else anybody wants to chuck in, please do stick that in the chat function. However, and the regulars will tell you, what is the golden rule here at BOTW? It's DBAD. Don't be a dick. If you're going to use the chat function, be respectful of other people's thoughts, feelings, and what you're saying as we go along. Let's all be friends here and have some conversations about hockey rather than an argument. If you want to have an argument about hockey, I direct you to Twitter. But yeah, so a very surreal night Sunday night in Basingstoke, and I hope I've been able to kind of capture some of the emotions of kind of what happened there. It was an odd game, and I think Leeds. The congratulations to the Leeds Knights. Of course, they qualified for the Final Four weekend in Coventry, as they deserve to do. They're very, very good. But the blowout that happened in Leeds on Saturday night was bad in some ways, because it would have been nice for the Bison to kind of be able to go into Sunday with an opportunity to qualify for Coventry and kind of have that big, the sort of big Hollywood style ending. But actually what it kind of allowed Sunday to do is it kind of allowed it to kind of be a standalone thing. The Bison were never going to accidentally beat Leeds by 9 goals on Sunday. So what it allowed the occasion to be was kind of a celebration of the club and the people and the place. And yeah, Leeds won because that's what Leeds do. But if kind of like the ending. I'm not to spoil anything. This film's like 30-something years, over 30 years old, 40 years old, in fact. But if you've ever seen the original Rocky, it felt like that kind of an ending, where the scoreline didn't matter, and this was just about kind of celebrating the Bison as a club. And you know what? And I know Peter Bradbury's in the chat, and he was there with the Leeds fans, but there is not a Bison player who played on Sunday night who did not put absolutely everything into every single shift that they did. And it was it was a very sad Sunday, and it was a very, very hard day for a lot of people. But I was so very proud to be connected with the club. I've been really fortunate to be connected to this club in the way that I have been, and to kind of accidentally on purpose be a prominent supporter of the Bison within the British hockey space. But certainly for me, just this immense feeling of pride and to just be there with people, because so many of that team as well who've been there for a couple of years or were juniors there and kind of had the and were there and it's sort of come back. You think of like Alex Metham, who's sort of come down from the north and he's been around for such a long time now in Bison. So Jordan Lauday is a former Bison junior, and there's other Bison juniors that they're on the roster, like Paul Petts, Hallam Wilson, Josh Kelly is a former Bison junior as well, of course. Travis Penny. Roman Cathcart, who got into the lineup on Sunday, which was great to see. Carl Graham had obviously played for the Bison before, was part of the 2013-14 double winning side, and so many guys who kind of sort of who'd been there or had kind of gone away and come back, as well as some of those guys who hadn't been around as long, so people like Zach Milton, people like obviously like Marcel Balach and Gail Lebuele, who maybe didn't have maybe on a different team, maybe they would have scored 20, 30 more points, but kind of bought into what was happening there. And it was a surreal, very, very surreal moment to kind of be there at the end. And, I like getting feedback on what I've written, constructive. It's nice to be praised for what you write. And I've had a lot of people say very, very good things about what I've written over the last day or so. So that's nice. But the one thing I would say is that I'm just interested to hear people's thoughts about it. Have I done the game justice? So if you get a chance, please do go and do that. The one thing we do need to mention is that Britain, GB's under 18s are currently playing, and as far as I'm aware, one young man who we've spoken about very, very highly of recently, and speaking of Leeds as well, he obviously wasn't there across the weekend because for very, very obvious reasons, because he's currently over at Worlds. Finn Braden has a hat-trick for GB against Serbia right now, inside 28 minutes, which is pretty impressive. That young man is going to do absolute bits in the future. And it'd be really interesting as well, because sometimes it's sometimes you do wonder, and this is one of those things, and you can kind of look at the difference of kind of where people's paths kind of converge and go in different places. But I think about where would Finn Braden have been best used right now, and actually he's probably better off being with GB at Worlds and getting a ton of minutes there than he would have been being sat on the Knights bench doing nothing. And I think, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's always worked out, and I think particularly the net mining situation, where obviously everything that's happened in Peterborough saw Tyler Delabatouche really have to step up and step into being that goalkeeper, and obviously didn't quite go Peterborough's way over the weekend. But what a shift Tyler Delabatouche put in, and he was much better suited to probably being there in Peterborough than he would have been potentially being at Worlds with the under 18s and splitting time with Luca Tasadri, who is one of his very, very good friends. And actually it's worked out really, really well for everybody there. Luca's had, obviously GB lost their second game, but Luca Tasadri's got both the first two starts, so that's 120 minutes of international hockey for him. That's going to massively help his development. Tyler got to be literally in the fire in a playoff series. That's going to help his game a bunch as well. And so, for Finn Braden is, obviously this is something of a breakout game, and some of those people who don't necessarily pay as much attention to some of the lower reaches of British hockey like we do here at Banners on the Wall, hopefully we'll see those tweets from Team GB and we'll kind of start, the brain will start ticking over a little bit. Tyler got a bit of stick off some fans, but in my opinion, he was amazing. People giving Tyler Delabatouche stick for his performances over the weekend need to have a really, really serious rethink about of their expectations on that one. I had a very, very brief conversation with Tom Norton about everything, and he was glowing with how he thought Tyler had played. And Tom Norton helps coach that team. He's one of the best defensemen in this division, and if he thinks he had a good couple of games, then I will bow to Tom Norton on that one. But either way, Coventry this weekend, everything is set, because we know. Oh, that's the wrong thing. 100% the wrong thing there. Almost got me personal face, but what I was looking for? I was looking for the picture Grant King took from the took from the end of the Bison game, which I'll look for in a bit when I don't have everything on the screen. That was impressive of me. Scroll down, Anthony. There we go. So we get to the bits and pieces. So we have the results from the weekend. Now, of course, Basingstoke, we know Leeds absolutely smashed through the Bison on Saturday evening to make Sunday night I was about to say a parade, but actually, you know what? It was a really, really good game, and credit to Leeds for turning up and actually trying, not sort of dancing around it, not being silly about it, just going out and making it a contest and playing. There was a point at the beginning of Sunday night where I wondered how, and it seemed like the Knights were a bit unsure as to how to kind of approach the game itself. When you're such a young squad, and of course Matt Hayward had a good idea of how to deal with this. Sam Zanjak injured, or at least not played on Sunday night, and you've got all these young guys, and they've not ever really kind of been in a situation like they had to face on Sunday. And there was a point where the Knights looked a little bit confused, but that malaise eventually kind of kicked away and they got on with bits and pieces. The playoffs, however, started back last Friday evening, and well, from a series that had been really, really close between the two sides, and where both sides had actually won more away from home than they had at home against the other team, the Sheffield Steel Dogs turned up and turned on the Jets. One of those nights for the Wildcats where they just couldn't get the bounces, nothing went their way. The Steel Dogs absolutely punished their mistakes. 7-1 Sheffield win the home leg on the Friday night. And of course, there was a lot of bits and pieces going on towards the end of this game as well. Multiple fights. Tyler Plews having to be physically wrestled away by linesmen. Sort of a bit of a melee that was kind of caused by sort of a bit of an altercation between Colby Tower and Lee Bonner, and that kind of escalated. What that ended up with was the Wildcats had a mountain to climb back in Swindon on the Saturday evening, and credit to the Dogs, they just kind of managed the final 3 periods of this tie well out of reach. A 2-2 tie down in Swindon means the Wildcats season ends early. It's a 9-3 aggregate win for Gregwood's side, and the playoff champions will return to Coventry this coming Saturday. What do we think of the Wildcat season as a whole, though? I did see somebody, I think it was Ben Callahan actually, who sort of tweeted about the fact that maybe this season didn't go as well as Cats fans would have liked. The Cats have struggled a bit consistency-wise in terms of form. They've sort of been a bit up and down, and of course, the big elephant in the room when it comes to the Wildcats is that the father of their GM and their player coach is also the owner of Leeds. And how come Leeds have done so well, where Swindon haven't this year? And I think probably the answer to that one is that Steve Nell doesn't build the roster. Aaron Nell built the roster in Swindon. Ryan Aldrich built the roster in Leeds, and that's probably why we've got what we've got on that front. But I think there's, the Cats having something of an off year is not the end of the world for them. I think it's a chance for kind of Swindon to kind of reevaluate and maybe do a little bit of retooling, like proper retooling over the summer, especially now where you have an entire roster's worth of guys that are going to need jobs. There's a few guys in Bristol and Swindon who need, and in Slough as well with the Bees, who need to be looking over their shoulders here, because there's pieces in that Basingstoke team who could very, very easily do some jobs in these other places. Yet 2014, Jamie, was the last time Swindon qualified for Coventry. They lost to Manchester in overtime. We don't mention what happened in overtime, or I'll let Tom Graham mention what happened in overtime. Mostly because Dave Clapman is nailed on that he made the right call in that one. We didn't qualify in the crossover years either. Ultimately, it's a season of inconsistency where the D group, other than Bedbris and Whitfield, underachieved massively. I still think Edgar's Bedbris is wasted on defence. The club can say that Bedbris requested the move to D. I feel less certain about that statement every time I hear it now, because Bedbris is not a defenceman. It's like watching the Coventry Blaze when they used to play Matt Selby at forward. You've got the wrong guy who's made for the wrong job in the wrong position. What are you doing? And ultimately, really, I appreciate Russ Cowley prefers playing at forward, but Cowley would have been better at playing on D for Swindon than Bedbris would have been, and that could have really, really made a difference there, I think, potentially. But such is life. If we were all made of straw, we'd be scarecrows. What happened? No, you can ask Tom Graham now. He'll tell you about the 2014 playoff semi-final for Swindon. Um, but yes, otherwise that's two teams from Yorkshire make their way back to Coventry, and then of course we have to face the fact that not only are the league champions have made it to Coventry, but the second place in the league and the third place in the league are out. Milton Keynes do not make Coventry. Peterborough do not make Coventry, and in some ways, I think this is probably, given the circumstances around it, much more of a surprise that Milton Keynes don't make it, because they are knocked out by the 7th seed Telford Tigers. Tigers, who only secured 7th spot pretty much within they secured playoff qualification after the Bison and only got 7th spot in the week or so leading up to it. But they have massively managed to turn form on its head, outworked and managed to ease their way past the Lightning in the end. It was close and it was very, very tight, but Telford win in Milton Keynes, a Jake Price goal of all people. So not one of the big flashy names, but Jake Price gets the game winner on the Saturday, and then Vladimir Luka with a hat-trick on Sunday, and a 5-all tie game in Telford means it's an 8-7 aggregate win for Tom Watkins. And credit where it's due to Tommy Watkins. They have had a tough old year in Telford, but cometh the hour, cometh the man. Watkins has not lost any of that coaching now, where he's had some of the issues in terms of personnel this year. But a massive, massive achievement for the Tigers. When you think of last season to this season for Telford, it has been like night and day. But this is the joy of the playoffs, and especially in British hockey, the joy of that short playoff format where Telford can turn 2 games on a sixpence and have come good at the right time. You think as well, and it's really that big 3 additions. Obviously, everybody will talk about Rory Herman, cut loose by the Cardiff Devils, having finished early at RPI in college hockey in America, come over, not really stuck around in Cardiff, goes to Telford and made a massive impact. But it's also those extra bits of added depth and nous in Tom Carlin and Gareth O'Flaherty that have really, really helped this team. And basically now Telford have literally ground their way out into the playoff semi-final this weekend. Unreal one for Telford, given they genuinely looked like they missed the playoffs at one stage. Yet they genuinely did. There was games they lost against the Bison where they just did not look at the races at all, and that was just before Herman turned up, just before Carlon and Flaherty turned up as well, and they did not look like they were going to be able to do anything. Tommy Watkins calling in a few favours and really being able to get the best out of his players on the run in. And you think as well of someone like Bailey Harewood, who obviously moved to be back closer to Cardiff. Go and play for Bristol. Didn't work out for him very well, that particular move, did it? Because Bailey Harewood's now on the golf course, and Rory Herman's now in a playoff semi-final. The other tie, of course, a return to the Final Four weekend, and a playoff appearance for the Raiders. They managed to squeeze past the Peterborough Phantoms. It goes to overtime on the Sunday in Peterborough, but it is the Raiders who managed to pull their way through and get to their first ever. Certainly for quite some time. I remember their first sort of Coventry weekend. But a fantastic performance from them. Obviously, Peterborough, quite badly beset by injuries. No Jordan Marr, no Ryan Bainborough, 17-year-old Tyler Delabatouche in net. Injuries in other parts. They'd obviously had guys in and out of the lineup a little bit for weeks, especially following the cup final success. So not the end of the world that Peterborough don't make the Coventry weekend, because they did have some. They've got a bit of success. They can go and keep themselves warm, hugging the National Cup trophy in that front. But great to see a slightly different team. Obviously, we've seen a lot of Telford at Coventry. We've seen a lot of Sheffield at Coventry. Obviously, Leeds are still quite a new team, but we expected them to be there. So it's good to have Romford, who are not your traditional side. We see this 2005, second time in 17 years for that one. So thanks to Kevin and Ryan there in the chat. Just fact as well, Sean Norris scored a hat-trick in 1 minute 14 seconds on Sunday night, and that's the quality of Sean Norris. I mean, that's, we'll touch on the GB roster in a bit, but this is why Sean Norris probably shouldn't be in the NIHL next year. You'd hope at this point Belfast are going to take an opportunity, going to take a real chance on this lad and pull him over full time into the Giants roster, because he can have that amount of quality. But one man cannot do it on his own. Hockey is a team sport. After all, some players are generational talents and they can put an entire team on their back. There isn't anybody really in the NIHL that can do that. Not even Kieran Brown can win games single-handedly if you think about that complete stacked top six that Leeds have. But and if nothing else, if nothing else for Sean Norris, he's won something already this year, so he's pretty well set. Of course, as well, the final games are then for a few people on Sunday who've obviously retired. Alex Metham retiring after 21 years of playing the game, and then announced at the end of the game as having his number 28 jersey retired by the Basingstoke Bison when it was announced by John Neville, and John Neville gave the announcement to Darren Bavister to announce that when the Bison return in 2024, number 28 will go on the wall for Alex Metham. This, of course, did cause a tiny bit of perturbation from certain areas of the fan base who moved from Basingstoke to the Bees. But I did do quite sort of a lengthy thread as to why I felt that necessarily retiring number 28 for Doug Shepherd was not a thing that was going to happen in the immediacy. The other thing as well that we saw was the retirement of Lee Jamieson. Now, Lee Jamieson is one of those players where a lot of you don't like him when he's playing against you, but Lee Jamieson has had a very, very solid career in British hockey, and also just give it the one thing I've forgotten was just how much he played for Belfast. He played for Coventry as well, but he's very, very very much more in my head very much associated with Milton Keynes. He's one of those kind of players really where the end of his Milton Keynes career is not so much having a retirement ceremony, it's just take the jersey off and we'll nail gun it to the wall now and just make sure. I would be very, very surprised if the Milton Keynes Lightning do not retire Lee Jamieson's number 19. Got to be slightly disappointing again for the season for MK. Far stronger league campaign than last year, but failed to make Coventry and also lost in the Cup semi-final. I think there's a real discussion that Milton Keynes need to have about the makeup of their team, and I think there's two elements to this, because people will say Anthony, the Leeds and the MK rosters are not built massively differently, and I'd say no. I'd say you're right to a point, but I think the one thing that Leeds had that Milton Keynes clearly didn't have, there was much more of a mentality issue. The one thing I found with Milton Keynes, and Milton Keynes like massive. Whenever Milton Keynes played the Bison, I think it was something ridiculous. Like they outscored the Bison 20 goals to 1. But MK never looked like they wanted to be at full gear. And stylistically, Leeds' game suited Basingstoke more, and that's why games between the Bison and the Knights were never blowouts, because actually the way Leeds played it just worked for how Basingstoke played. But Leeds always won. And I've said it before and I will say this again. The one thing Leeds were every time I saw them that Milton Keynes were not was they were relentless. Irrespective of whether it was Kieran Brown or Matt Hayward, or whether it was Tate Shudra, Tate Shudra, Finn Braden or Damani James, whether it was Sam Zajac or whether it was Bailey Perry, whether it was Sam Gospel or Harrison Walker, there was that from a mentality point of view, from watching it for me, Leeds had something MK didn't. MK felt like they wanted to go by on their talent alone at times. The other big thing I think actually is the fact that is that Joe Wilson is there as an assistant coach, but he's there to implement Tim Wallace's game plan. And I think Leeds massively benefited from Ryan Aldrich not being on the ice and being able to kind of pull the puppet strings from off the ice. I think that's probably, people sometimes forget just how much that can really impact things. And we saw it in Basingstoke where Doug Shepherd won stuff as a player coach, but also won stuff when he was off the ice. And he was much more effective off the ice than he was on it. and that was part of the reason why I said people saying that 28, why are you not retiring it for Sheffield, why are you retiring it for Metham, who was with the club for 5 years, including the pandemic, and didn't win any trophies with you. And I think it's because ultimately, if you know, coaches are at their most effective when they don't have to play as well. I think is probably the best thing there. Leeds are just faster and so much more relentless than any other team in this league. Very, very true. It's very, very true. The team that matches Leeds, I think, in relentlessness is the Raiders. The Raiders do not have Leeds' skill or their speed, but I think there's something I really like about watching the Raiders play. They've got a real tenacity about them, and that is what makes them why I really find them interesting as a team. So what that means, though, is Coventry this coming weekend, Saturday, the 15th of April, 2023. We now know what our semi-finals will be, and they are inverted from the way Joe Scutts has put them on at nhlstats.wordpress.com. We know that the 1:30 p.m. semi-final will see the Sheffield Steel Dogs take on the Raiders, and we know that the late face-off, which is 5:30. I want to panic-strickenly say in my head, 5:30 p.m. for the Leeds Knights and the Telford Tigers. I feel like we're staring down the barrel of a Leeds Sheffield final. The thing is that I think that second semi-final is going to be a lot closer than people think, because of some of the talent in that Raiders side who've done things elsewhere. Mostly Aaron Connolly. At some stage, just for some reason, since he's left the Bison, and because the Raiders obviously had to sort of go down to come back up, I think people have forgotten just how good Aaron Connolly is in these things. There is the Bison winning the 2018 National Final Four does not happen if Aaron Connolly does not literally win the game against Sheffield on his own. All things considered, so that'll be interesting. Here's the thing, though: if the Raiders make the final, I don't think in this format they can get Leeds. If Sheffield make the final, Sheffield can beat Leeds. And that's not to denigrate the Raiders at all. And, you know, just like the Invicta Mustangs did, I really hope you can kind of prove me wrong. But for me, we're looking down the barrel of a Knights Steel Dogs final here. I'd be really interested about what people think. What do we see Saturday? What do we see Sunday? Come what is it, like 6:30, 7 o'clock? Who wins the semis? Who wins the final? Let's hear what people think about that. It'd be really interesting to hear. Ethan James wins the best hair in Coventry. We'd love to know how he gets his hair in the helmets, because his hair, it squishes down and that helmet weighs a lot. Although, to be fair, given the fact I'll be there, I'll have the microphone app. You can ask. I might even have a chance to ask him. A Sheffield Telford final. That is a very, very brave prediction now. But fair play to you for nailing your colours to the mast there. I do not think that Telford have the depth to be able to deal with Leeds. I think that obviously it's one game, and everyone was saying, do Telford have a puncher's chance? Absolutely. Do Romford have a chance against Sheffield? Absolutely. But I think that Knights side that's also driven a little bit by just how disappointing they were in the playoffs last year. Telford have a point to prove, but for me the Knights just have way too much depth for this one. And also Sam Gospel in a big game. Obviously that first leg of the cup final did not go well, but I think Gospel, given the opportunity, he's going to be very good. The Raiders forward unit is far deeper than most people give it credit for. Gomachich, Roberts, Connolly, Gulliver, Sylvester, Aliv and Novak can cause real issues for any team. It's very, very true. Very, very true. Leeds Sheffield final, dogs to win, says Kev. Wow. Definitely a very interesting one. If Peterborough, if anybody else, I'd be very interested to see whether Tommy Watkins and Tommy Watkins, Sean Easton and Greg Wood have made a phone call to Slava Kulikov during the week about how best to get to the Knights, because of course there's only one team that have given Leeds a proper kicking this year. Obviously Milton Keynes beat them, Swindon beat them. Only one team gave Leeds a kicking this year, and it was Peterborough, of course. Leeds versus Sheffield final, dogs take it. Don't sleep on Dimitri. You can never sleep on Dimitri Zamosdra, of course, the demigod, as Joe Scutts likes to call him. Obviously has a fantastic skill set. Thrives on the big occasion, does Dimmy, and he will be we can't, if nothing else, if we get a Leeds Sheffield final, that goalie duel is going to be out of this world. It will be fantastic viewing. But I think we've got two very interesting semi-finals. Like I say, I think the second one is going to be closer than the first, all things considered. So I think there's a lot to be said in terms of the entertainment value that we're going to get out of out of what we get this weekend. And for me, I've said it before and I'll say it again, the NHL weekend just is better value for money than the Elite League one. You people can make of the quality of hockey kind of whatever they want, but this is a weekend where you get 4 games of note, of quality. You do not get that at the Elite League finals, and you pay a lot more money for not that much more in terms of quality, I'd argue. Leeds versus Raiders, says Jonathan Greenwood. It's certainly an interesting one. It very much depends, I think, on which Sheffield side turns up. They are, however, hardwired for this. And Sean Thompson says it to me at least twice a year. Don't bet against Greg Wood. Says it to me every year. I think the crowd will be down on last year, I'm afraid to say. Well, if Milton Keynes fans don't want to show up because they got knocked out, that's up to them. I think that's, I personally think it's a shame when people do that. And I mean, I can respect people's choices on it. People can't justify it to themselves if their team's not there. That's their decision. For me, this is about the experience as much as anything else, and that's really easy for me to say as somebody who does what I do. But I think actually there's something really good to be said about the experience of being there. And if your team's not there, it's almost easier in a way because there's no pressure. You can just watch. You can just sit back and enjoy the moment. And if you want to be nervous and pick a team and cheer for them, you can pick a team and cheer for them. And if you just want to enjoy the hockey and see what nonsense the rest gets up to, you can do that as well. So the idea that lots of people are and I've seen a fair few people, mostly MK fans, selling tickets. You know what? It's just a bit of a shame, really. Like, MK didn't have a divine right to make the weekend. Nobody did. Like, Leeds could have screwed the pooch again, and Basingstoke could have got through. But the crowd being down is one thing, but our ticket sales down. Ultimately, the seats are sold even if the fans don't turn up. It's very true. Very, very true. And certainly Coventry will be more full than I think we saw Altrincham and Milton Keynes at the weekend for the other 2 weekends. But the one thing we should do is at least talk about the fact that we do have that 4th game on Sunday. Midday face-off, of course, for the NIHL Division 1 National Final. And, well, we've had the Division 1 weekends, and it was again the all-conquering... oh, damn, that's the word I wanted to click. There we go. Let's move that there. There we go. That's a little bit better. The all-conquering Solway Sharks have taken the North again. Billingham, their season comes to a bit of a premature end, actually. They end up getting David Longstaff and Dean Holland given one final shot at the silverware as the Warriors got themselves a lead against Billingham and never really let up. They managed the game superbly. The Warriors make the final. Solway batter Solihull 11-1. It was like a league game in most of the times the way that Solway play. And then you get the age-old foes. We saw the North 1 Cup final, that fantastic 125 minutes worth of hockey between the Sharks and the Stars. The young pretenders could not quite, were seconds away from beating Solway and ruining their Grand Slam dream before it even got started. And instead, the Sharks found a way and won 2 trophies in a night. They claimed their 3rd in Altrincham with a 2-0 shutout win for Callum Hepburn and the Solway Sharks. They defeat the Whitley Warriors to get themselves over the line. There. Solway now, of course, on for a famous Grand Slam. We literally see a reverse of what we got last year, of course, in terms of the position of what teams are doing coming into the weekend. Last year, it was Streatham who came in having won every single trophy, and then end up falling short at the last hurdle. The question this time for Solway is, can they beat Streatham? And it's a Streatham side now at full strength that they arguably were not last year. Streatham, of course, no Grand Slam for them this year, missing out on the Cup, not qualifying after 3 of their games at the beginning of the year, were stricken from the were given as losses against them because the owners at Streatham couldn't count and didn't play, and played Vanya Antonov when he was still suspended. That Cup went to Invicta, who got within a gnat's whisker of making that final. But the Solent Devils and Alex Murray cannot be counted out at the death. They've done it in times past as well. They did it against Chelmsford a couple of years ago, and they did it here as well. 3-1 down to tie the game at 3-3. A horrible incident as well, where Juraj Huska got called, and in frustration threw his stick, and instead of hitting the wall, Huska's stick clears the boards and unfortunately injured a child. A match penalty for Huska, which gave the Devils all the time that they needed, and Devils win in overtime to claim their place in the final again. Streatham, well, they went behind early on against Romford, but managed to push their way past and got themselves past the Raiders again. This time without Vanya Antonov accidentally kicking anybody in the face. So, bonus there. And what it set up again was what has been the main battle in the south. In the north, it had been Solway and Whitley Bay for so long. This year, a bit more Solway and Billingham, but it has been Streatham and Solent, South London and the South Coast knocking heads. But Streatham do it again. Solent consigned to yet another runners-up medal in the league and in the playoffs. A 5-1 victory for Ben Painter's side as they ultimately find a way past the Devils. The Devils, I think probably the best way to describe it is the fact that the Solent just gave everything on the Saturday night and just didn't seem to have much to be able to give on the Sunday evening, where Streatham obviously were a bit fresher, had a bit more in the way of ideas as well. And a really, really tough night, of course, for Solent. Not only going out on yet another defeat in a big game like this, but also the retirement of a bunch of different guys as well. And I'm going to go and actually get the list up because I want to make sure I do this properly and I do this accurately, because obviously the big one, of course, certainly the biggest one in my opinion, is the retirement of Christian Cole, of Chico Cole, their netminder. Only 24 years of age as well, Chico. He's not very old, but my understanding is that work commitments, he's got quite a flourishing building business, and that is taking up a lot of his time, so he is stepping away. Also, Jamie Fitzpatrick, Ben Locke, and Mark Pitts are due to have also retired at the end of this season as well. So a lot of those guys, and I think Alex Murray talked about it to Zero Pucks Given, to Ben about it as well, that the one thing with Solent is that a lot of these guys started on this journey together kind of when Alex Murray took over coaching the Devils, and they started at the bottom and really built their way up and built their way up and built their way up, and they got to this point where they now just keep being there right on the cusp, and they just don't seem to find a way over the top of it. I think the only thing I can remind Streatham fans is that no team wins forever, and you have to wonder one day when will it come for the Devils. There's going to have to be some very big retooling, especially in that netminding department now. The loss of Chico, who is arguably one of the best players to never play at the second, above the third tier of British hockey, because Chico's numbers are ridiculous at this level, and it's a shame he never quite got that shot higher up. But the Devils are going to have to unfortunately go back to the drawing board as Streatham again face down the Solway Sharks at midday this coming Sunday in what is going to be, and I think I've seen it in there, that was mentioned, I think it was Kev who said it, game of the weekend. It has the real potential once again. It stole the show last year, and it could steal the show again this year. The big difference maker, of course, this year is we get a full-strength Solway Sharks against what is a full-strength Streatham side that has Ryan Watt, that has Vanya Antonov in there as well, which is going to be fantastic for them. Let's just have a quick scoot at the chat before we mention the big elephant in the room here that obviously got talked about. Hull Seahawks fan, should be a good weekend off hockey to watch. Not supporting anyone in particular, just looking forward to having some beers with my mates. Great to see, Niall. Pucking Mad, I cannot wait for Solway versus Streatham. I'm sure it'll be a great advert for NHL 1. It's absolutely going to be so. Andrew Day, of course, the man, the myth, the machine himself, who will, of course, be wandering around commentary. Do make sure you do say hello to him if you see him. Stillwell's got one of the best defences in the league. Zimostra top net minor, but the core of Morgan, Kirk, Bell and Hayward are all good. Actually, that's a really good point, Andrew, that I hadn't touched on, was that just that D core as well for Sheffield is huge. It does huge amounts for them too. May look to go to playoffs next year. Has not attended a playoffs weekend since 2016. I mean, there's still tickets, Pete. You can still go now. Ben from Zero Pucks Given got you on the phone. GB under 18s on the telly. It's probably the best way around to do it. No, if anybody watched anybody saw me on Saturday, you don't need me in high definition. That's for sure. Jamie, GB lead 4-1 into the third versus Serbia. Ollie Nags with the fourth. I think Ollie might get a D spot with the Lightning lineup next season. I think you mentioned it above there, Jamie, as well. There's going to be some quite big retooling probably from the Lightning if you think JMO's gone. There's obviously a lot of talk about Norris and Talbot, whether they will be back. You know, obviously Liam Stewart sort of rubbished rumours he was going back to the States, but what is Liam Stewart going to do next year? You know, what happens if Jordan Headley gets a full-time Elite League spot? Does Tim Wallace put all of that pressure on Dan Crowe to be the starter? Does Tim Wallace even stay? Does David Sarkanis stay? You know, does whoever's in charge of Milton Keynes think about maybe swapping out David Sarkanis for a Marcel Balach, for a Gael Lebuele? You know, there's a bunch of different. You know, there's a lot of permutations I think now for a lot of clubs. But it does certainly look like from a lot of, you know, there's a lot of rumour about the fact that MK will be a very different looking side next year. Andrew Day, legend. He is, yes. Also as well, and it's not to pump Andrew's tyres too much, he's also just one of the nicest people I've met in British hockey. So if you see Andrew around, do make sure you say hello. And if you enjoy what he does, thank him. Actually, that's the same thing for a lot of people. If you enjoy what they do, tell them thank you. Whether it's your mum or whether it's something you enjoy that you've read or you watch somewhere, thank people for the stuff that they do because it's nice. South 1 final. Streatham scored 35 seconds in and looked in control for the whole game. Devils worked hard but hardly threatened Streatham. Yeah, I said that. I said just before you came in, Andrew. I think Saturday night took it out of the Devils, and I think they just didn't have the answer. And certainly, actually, one thing that Joe Scutts and Chris Beale picked up very well on commentary is that the Devils just kept ceding the middle of the ice to the Redhawks, which is just a really, really bad idea when a lot of Streatham's game plan is one man crashes the wing, one man crashes the centre, and the puck will go in the middle. So you're letting everybody just walk up the middle of the ice. Not the best of ideas, in all things considered. Also, shout out Ryan Watt, because his backhand for the fifth. Apparently, I did ask him about this, because apparently he'd been practising it for weeks, and he said, yes, I have been, ever since Crosby did it. So he just decided to just keep practising it himself. The only issue there for Ryan is it's happened once. Callum Hepburn is probably going to watch that tape. People said the nicest things to me in Milton Keynes over the weekend. It's very much appreciated. Yeah, and I think the really, really good. I think it's a good thing, Ben, in terms because I think one of the things I've tried to do for a really, really long time here is to just kind of put a bit more light on some of those divisions. And I think the one thing you've been really good at is because you've got the ability to focus more in on that one division. And hey, if you want to spread out and do, you've done a lot of great stuff in terms of sort of Cheltenham, wrong side of the country, Chelmsford, and kind of shining a light on the stuff that's kind of happening there. I've done, I've sung the praise of the NIHL for a while, but I've focused on the national, having somebody who's focusing on that South 1 league and a lot of that stuff happening in Chelmsford and a lot, the Warriors and the women's team and the juniors and stuff like that. And I think the one thing people do appreciate is the fact that, and this is one of those things that kind of that I was watching A View from the Bridge last night as I wanted to do, and they're speaking to Todd Kelman, and sort of saying, this isn't the NHL, this doesn't matter in that sort of sense, but that's where he's wrong, and I think that's the thing that makes that sort of things mean, no, this is not the NHL, this is not the best league in the world, but this is what we have on our doorstep, this is what we go to every week, this is what means something to us here, and when people treat stuff like that with respect, and when people try and shine a light on it and to say, you know what, this is happening under your nose, and this is good, and this is fun, and this is exciting, and this is entertaining. And there's something really big about hockey, about the fact that, certainly more than some other sports, is that it just feels quite tangible and touchable, and you can be close to what is happening. You're not sat miles away, you can be in close, and you can see the people and talk to the people and interact with people. And it's not that hockey is not a unique sport in that sense, but I think this idea that because it's not the biggest thing, and a lot of people will look, and a lot of people, and some people will do this in terms of the will do this in terms of whatever league they're in respective. But a lot of people from the elite league just look at the NIHL as this sort of space that, oh, they're just, you know, when the players are good enough, they'll turn up here and that's fine. And it's such a narrow-minded view about it. And people have a really narrow-minded view about the elite league as well, about this idea that it's just this busman's league, it's a holiday league for imports. And actually, some of the clubs at the top are really starting to kind of turn that around and really make really make the elite league kind of a place to play. There's a bunch of stuff wrong with the elite league, don't get me wrong, and I've made that point quite a few times. The elite league does some stuff very well and does other stuff very, very badly. But so do clubs, so does the NIHL structure as well. There's things that the NIHL don't get right either. But I think that to sort of return to my point, like people saying nice things about what Ben's doing at 0 pucks given is not a surprise, because people care about what they go to and people care about the stuff that they kind of see. And when people kind of treat it, and it's not to kind of overinflate it and make it more important than it is, but when people see something and they shows like, this is a good thing and this is why it is a good thing, people will always pick that up and people will always be impressed, and people will always be impressed with it. And I think, whether it's the drop the puck guys kind of doing it with North One, or whether it's 0 pucks given in South One, and people have obviously said a lot of very nice things about me over the last few days and my writing. We do it because it's a labour of love, and we enjoy it, but also because it deserves it. The people who put the effort into to play it and to put it on and to officiate it and to do all the bits and pieces with it, they deserve to get that appreciation of people saying, here is a good thing. Come enjoy the good thing. Come enjoy the good thing with us. And that's really good. Will some MK players join Cliff in Chelmsford next season? Alex White for starters. Thunder could drop to South 2. The rumour about the Thunder dropping to South 2 has been knocking around for a couple of weeks now, but this is mostly, I think, off the back of the fact that there is some very, very strong rumours about a couple of the sides from the top of South 2 wanting to step up, and the Thunder dropping down. I think is just quite a logical consequence of the fact that they just got 20 goals put on them by Streatham. In some ways, I don't think it'd be the worst thing for the Thunder. I think they've been the whipping boys of South One now for a while. Some time to kind of regroup and refocus and kind of take that under 18s lineup and kind of sort of bring them on a little bit more. And South 2 might be the better place for them for that. It's obviously worked quite well for Peterborough. Thank you for the great feedback, Anthony. You do a brilliant job yourself. Hope you have a great time with commentary. Always good if your team is there or not. 100%, Andrew. I'm sure you and I will meet at some stage. Thoughts on the Husker incident? Now, I have to be 100% honest here, Lee. I did not see the Husker incident because I was obviously in Basingstoke when it happened on Sunday. I thought the statement that Invicta put out was good, which was, this is a bad thing. Euro feels really bad about it too. We will deal with this internally. What that means, I don't know. But certainly, I've not unfortunately, unfortunately means whether it's a good or a bad thing, I'm not sure. There, I've not seen a video of this. I've only got what I've been told. I spoke to people who were there on the night. I spoke to people who watched it, and yeah, it's my hope is that in frustration, he's just kind of gone to chuck his stick at the board and it's missed and it's gone into the crowd. I genuinely do not think Uri Husker is such a wild card that he would just yeeted his stick over the balls to try and catch somebody in the crowd. I don't think he would have done that. It's bad, and I think he probably needs to be suspended for it for the beginning of next year if he's not already retiring. But I think probably unfortunate. It's probably the only thing I can really describe it as without seeing the incident to kind of make a judgment of it with my own eyes in that sense. But yes, I would not be surprised in the slightest if Husker doesn't get a suspension on this front. How big a suspension, I don't know. I'd venture he's probably going to get somewhere between 4 and 6, maybe even 10, because he's not slashed a guy and really injured him. He's hurt a child in the crowd, and I think there's probably some severe consequences in terms of the beginning of next year for Uri in that sense. The other thing then we do need to talk about very quickly as we're heading towards kind of like 9 o'clock and the like, is the fact that there is one other game that we had over the weekend. We obviously had our playoff quarterfinals in the National. We had our playoff semi-finals and finals in Division 1, but we had one game in North 2, which is the North 2 Cup. We obviously know Hull Jets won the league title, which was a reverse of last year when Telford won it. The Telford Tigers won the playoffs, which was a reverse of last year when Hull won it. And now we have the Cup, which is being played after the end of the season and after the end of the playoffs, because ice time in Division 2, I think, is probably the only way we can kind of work this out. But a big win for the Telford Tigers as they look to do the double that Hull did last year. The league champions seemingly in this division over the last couple of years, struggling at the death. They're going to get the league title and then don't know quite what to do. But a 5-2 win for Telford on over the weekend, with the second leg due to be played this coming Saturday. I don't know the face-off time for that off the top of my head, but certainly we'll obviously be trying to keep half an eye on that. Whether Karen Booth or not will be doing the Tigers 2 scores from that one, I do not know. However, we of course will do our level best to try and keep half an eye on on what's going on with that one, because it means that if nothing else, there is a trophy being awarded on Saturday night and a couple of trophies being awarded on Sunday night in the NIHL, which is pretty impressive. Still 4-1 GB against Serbia in the under 18s. Yeah. So rocking away there. 7 p.m. Thank you, Richie. Much obliged there for that one. Shout out to the Leeds fans for the respect they showed the Bison team on Sunday night. Yeah, and I've stuck this in my. I don't know whether you've read my read what I've written about this. Craig's Daddy, which is a fantastic username. But yeah, the Knights fans, and I do think a chunk of this is because there's certainly a contingent of the Leeds fan base, certainly that travelled on Sunday night, that were connected to the Manchester Phoenix, and I think they know what that's like. They know what that's like to see the end. Admittedly, for the Phoenix, the death was a much more sort of slow on by 1,000 cuts, which I suppose in some ways it has been for the Bison, but certainly the announcement was quick and was very much more ripping the bandage off and saying it more than what happened with the Phoenix, which obviously started with that awful playoff weekend in 2015, and that sort of announcement coming out in the middle of the semi-final, which I still maintain was just a spiteful thing to do, all things considered. There's a real story to be told one day about the death of the Phoenix and the emergence of the new Manchester Storm, but that would take quite a lot of time, and I think probably quite a lot of legal work to be sort of sidelined around to get to that point. But certainly, I think there's a the Leeds fans who turned up on Sunday evening, of course, and a few obviously had to kind of dip out. People, Leeds is a long way from Basingstoke, so no shame on the people who had to go, but the ones who stayed, it was massively appreciated. And also, the Leeds fans were there. They didn't mock it, not mocking, cheered on their team, and then when it got to the end, and everything was kind of sort of that it was that moment was happening. Leeds fans didn't no big chance for their own team, just joined in with the drumming, joined in with the clapping, and just kind of and watching enough of so many of them stay around to just kind of be there to see it happen and kind of pay their respects to what was going on meant a lot. It meant a lot to a lot of Bison fans, and like I've said in the piece, I think there's going to be a lot of Basingstoke support for Leeds on over the course of this weekend, and not for any sense of bandwagon jumping because they think that Leeds are going to win, but this is repaying. This is respect between fan bases here. It's repaying a big kindness that was shown to us. Matty Davis confirmed it'll be a 10-team league in the league next season. Yeah. As I've said, and I will say it again, if Basingstoke are due back in 2024, do not be surprised if Solway join them at the start line on that front. However, the Seahawks didn't exist until May of last year. That kind of came out of nowhere, so we don't know what will happen on that front. And it would certainly be strange of Hull's ownership to deny another team entry into the league in a similar way. So let's see what happens on that front. And of course, I'll be there over the course of this weekend to kind of do some bits and pieces. So for those of you who will be in Coventry, I will be floating around. You are, of course, more than welcome to come and say hello to me. I do not bite. I'm generally quite nice. However, the standard agreement is if you wish to complain about anything I have said or done, you must buy me a cup of tea first. Or a pint. One or the other. And then I will listen to you for 5 minutes and you can say whatever you like. However, I will be there across the course of the weekend. I'll be interviewing as many people as I can stick a microphone in front of to kind of get their thoughts on what's happening, pre-game, post-game, as the kind of weekend goes on. As an ex-Phoenix fan, I did have a lump in my throat at the end of the game for you guys. Yeah, very, very kind of you to say, Pete. And thank you very much for coming down. It was great to see you as well. But yeah, so the weekend, I'll be interviewing everybody left, right and centre. I think the thing, it'll be I'll try and do what I can in terms of getting people. I do, it's the joy of a media pass, of course. I do get those kind of bits and pieces. But I'll be doing that. The other thing as well, the plan is to do What's Current streams on Saturday morning and Sunday morning. Now, I appreciate Sunday morning, if you're there, you're going to have a hangover. And the last thing you're going to want to do is listen to me yammer on YouTube. However, that's going to be the plan. It'll be kind of a Saturday kind of catch up as to kind of where we are with bits and pieces, a bit of a taking stock of where we are, and kind of, and if nothing else, last year I drove to Coventry, stopped at the services for a wee, and Planet Ice has started sponsoring the division. So you never know what's going to happen on that front, but we'll kind of do that on Saturday, and then we'll do and we'll have on Sunday, we'll kind of recap Saturday and look forward to Sunday, because obviously we're going to have something to talk about on Sunday morning. So just a little bit of a chat, and then of course be there, both semi-finals on Saturday, both games on the Sunday. Hoping that we get the absolute best hockey that we possibly can on that front. I'm just trying to think of any other bits of news. Harvey Stead has re-signed with the Bees. Not a huge surprise, but good to see him back. As I said, I think there's a few people in those teams with the sudden wash of Brits that have kind of come into the into the player pool that's now available, because with no Basingstoke next year, do guys step up? Do guys step down? Where do people go? Lots to be kind of said, but Harvey Stead going back to the Bees. Rain is wet, sand is dry. Not a huge surprise on that front, but a big part of that defensive core as well. You think that Stuart Monk is currently announced as being back as well. It's a pretty solid foundation for the Bees. If anyone sees me, I'll be wearing an F Block on Tour jersey. Great, Kev. GB team announcement. Yeah. Actually, that's a really good point. The long squad, of course, announced ahead of the World Championships and ahead of the warm-up games, which sees three players with NHL experience this year into the roster. Of course, Jordan Headley, who's been GB's number 3 netminder for quite some time now, so he was not so much of a surprise. It was more of a surprise to see Kieran Brown and Sean Norris included in that. Brown, of course, who has Norris has had elite league time this year. Brown has not, but I think it was probably very, very hard to deny a man who scored 121 points. At least a looking at this point. But really excited for them. If nothing else, what does have to be said, and it does make me chuckle, Milton Keynes Lightning of the National Ice Hockey League National Division have more players in this GB Long squad than the Manchester Storm. More than most of the Scottish sides as well, into the bargain, which is pretty crazy. So Leeds have got more players in the squad than some elite league teams, which is pretty mad. And all they have is Kieran. So, but Kieran Brown is more than deserving of this chance. And I think I was listening to Matty Davis's chat with Nicky Watt the other day, and he said fair play to. I think Matty's kind of, and I think this is probably where Matty's closeness to Kieran, having played with him, is kind of. I think kind of comes into play here, because I think a lot of people will say, Kieran Brown should be in the elite league, and I think a chunk of this isn't that they think that he's too good for Leeds, even though he is too good for this entire division. I think the thing for a lot of people, and certainly how I would characterise my own position on this, is I want to see every young British player play at the highest possible level that they can do, and making something of the national division as a league and making something of hockey in Leeds is admirable. And actually, you know what, Leeds is still a very new developing market, and having somebody like Kieran Brown able to lead the charge there is huge. But with all due respect to the Leeds Knights, the national division is not the highest level of hockey, and ultimately I think it's seeing players play to their full potential as high as they can go. And I think it's a case of if Kieran Brown wants to stay at Leeds, I am not going to, that is entirely his decision. He is more than welcome to make that decision, and more power to him if he's able to make a good and comfortable living doing so. I want to see Kieran Brown in Sweden. I want to see Kieran Brown in Finland. I want to see Kieran Brown starring for the national team. And I worry about his propensity to do as much as he can do if he stays in the NIHL at the moment. The NIHL should be, for me, the national division should be what the Championship is to the Premier League. We should be this place where, yes, this is a ceiling for some guys, and they can play here and make a bit of money and do great things. But those who could go on and should go on, and we wish them well as they do it, and not try to kind of hoard them in here. And I think it's it's a very, very fine balance, and I 100% appreciate Matty's perspective on it as well. And it's a hard one. And of course, like, Matty and I come at this from completely different perspectives as well. What does Sam Gospel have to do? The Pete Russell, in a really shocking turn of events, picks the people Pete Russell likes. Otherwise, Kieran Long would have like 50 caps for GB. I'm baffled as well. Like, I get why, because of Headley's age, he is very much going to be a future, the future of British net mining. Gospel is nearly 30. He has less chance to do so. But who has been the better netminder this year? And with all due respect to Jordan Headley, Sam Gospel has been the best netminder in this division, bar none. There is not an argument to be made there. Jordan Marr, really good year, probably his best year. Probably the first year in quite some time he's outperformed Ronnie. Stimmy does great. But there is the best netminder in this division this year was Sam Gospel. And, Josh Shaw, empty net goal, 5-2, we're taking that. Thank you, Lee. Yes, we were going to mention the medals. We can do, because we've got time, because I don't have to. I'm not cutting over so people can go watch in Belfast. The medals. This is a tough one, because I think I've heard some bits and pieces that medals were purchased and they didn't turn up on time and a bunch of stuff like that. I always find it really interesting, medals for runners up, because and this is purely personal experience. I'm not gonna. I can't speak for everybody. No player I've met, or that I've spoken to about this, wants a runners-up medal, right? It's a thing that you get almost like you give it straight away to a kid in the crowd. I think of someone like Tommy Ralph who said that to me. It's just like, just give it straight away. I don't want the thing. But the situation, particularly with Solon, and particularly what was going on with Chico, to have them just come up and just have a photograph with an EIHA official look bad and is bad. Christian Cole has played his heart out for the Solon Devils for years, and tears in his eyes is forced into just having a photograph for the sake of having a photograph with nothing else to kind of come from it. And that's no disrespect to Danny Purchin. Danny Purchin worked really hard and is a really good guy. This was whoever made that decision, it was the wrong decision in my opinion. The hats thing is what it is. It's different. I think it should have been medals or both, really. And I think that it's a horrid situation, really, because it's one of those things, again, it's not done maliciously, but it's not been thought through very well. Why are the winners not getting what winners get, which is a medal, a commemoration of their thing? The trophies is an interesting one, because I actually don't mind the trophies. And having held one, they're actually pretty good quality. I was fortunate enough to hold the National Division 1 trophy last year before Andrea Stenton gave it back, demanded I give it back because she was worried I was going to nick it. But so the trophies are actually pretty decent quality. They're different. Different doesn't mean bad. I get why people want like a whopping great cup. That's fine. The hats, I like, but defo both. I like the hats, but get better hats. The hats actually apparently went down really, really well with the players when that design was done in the COVID series, Ben. So like Sheffield, the Sheffield players the Steel Dogs players when they won that COVID series in the national from the national division quite liked that, and apparently the that style went down very well, but I don't know on that front. But yeah, the medals thing. If people are saying that they should have runners-up medals, then great, that's fine. Like I say, I don't know many players who actually want the runners-up medal, but okay, let's go for that. The winners should get medals. The winners should get medals. And Nicky organising getting medals for people is a very Nicky thing to do. And whether he's getting them for this weekend or not, I don't know. Nicky is not in Coventry this weekend. He's in Nottingham. But like I said, the thing for this is, and this is one of those things with Nicky's desire in his head to do right by the boys, which is a chunk of what he's always done, is not a big surprise. It's a very Nicky thing to do. And Nicky and I agree and we disagree on how certain things are done, and that is what it is. But Nicky doing something like this, when he sees something and Nicky thinks it's wrong, he will try and rectify it in his way. That's what Nicky's like. He shouldn't have to do this for this. This is a very, very easily rectifiable situation. Like, this is really easy. If your medals are stuck somewhere else, go get others. They're quite easy to pick up. They're quite easy to sort. Most medals cost pennies to bulk buy and arrive in a few days. My missus works in that kind of industry, so the excuse they didn't arrive is very poor. Well, the thing is, they've not said, they've not confirmed it. I'm only kind of working on bits and pieces that I've been told here, Kev. So I don't really know. And I think that, like I say, this isn't a malicious thing on anybody's part. It's not a case of that somebody had someone's great ideas like they don't need medals. They're a waste of money. Let's get them a hat. But yeah. Like I said, one of the things I'm working on at the moment is that they were ordered and haven't arrived. It's a line of inquiry I'm working on. Should that be by the organiser? I think he has, but sure that should be by the organiser. A bit of a shit show, don't you think? 100%. It's wrong. There's no other way to describe it. The IHA should have medals ready right now. Why didn't they buy them in September? Why were they not ready then? Christmas, even. Gives you 4 months to kind of get this sorted. And I'm sure somebody within the IHA will tell me there's a really, really good reason for it. And I'm always happy to have those conversations with people. However, sometimes you need to take it on the chin. This looks bad because it is bad. Winners should be getting medals. You know, this isn't the sports holiday club my kid goes to, where every so often, kid gets best performer of the day and gets a little medal or something like that, or gets a certificate. Like, this is senior hockey in this country. I'd be really interested what happens at the WNIHL finals and whether Faye Andrews will let this kind of thing happen there. But for this to happen here, this to happen in the NIHL, it looks bad because it is bad. It's pretty much all you can kind of say on that front. I really hope, because I want to give the people in charge the opportunity to make right their mistake here. And ultimately, I think that they need to make sure that this is sorted. That come Sunday, when Solway or Streatham are national champions there, or one of the 4 teams wins the final four for the national division, there is a medal in their hand. They can have a hat, have a t-shirt, have a cuddly toy if you want, have a blooming unicorn, celebratory fluffy unicorn for winning the national playoff title, but they should have a medal. Don't think any of us should be arguing about this. Make it a chocolate coin, even get a few chocolate coins and chuck them at them. At least it'll be shiny. It is a bit, like I say, it's a shame. It is a shame, unfortunately, and it's one of those things I know where it's not been spoken about, it's not been explained to anybody, and actually what they should do is say, this is what we tried to do, X and Y has happened, X and Y hasn't, or X and Y hasn't happened, this is why it's not happened, this is why this has happened. Explain. Communicate. Tell us why. Because ultimately, it's not, with all due respect, it's not just Nicky shouting about this. The players think it's daft, coaches think it's daft, fans think it's daft. We can't all be the daft ones here. Ultimately, the complaints about the trophies are what they are, because at least there's a trophy. And like I say, I actually don't mind them. They're alright. Right, 9:15. So we've been going for it. We've been going for a little while. So what I will say is questions, comments, anything anybody wants to kind of chuck in, because we've obviously been going for a little bit. And like I say, the plan Saturday morning for a bit of a What's Current stream, sort of weekend preview once we all get to Coventry, and then we'll go again on Sunday. Interviews and bits and pieces over the weekend will mostly be audio rather than video, just because trying to upload anything in the Sky Dome with that many people and no Wi-Fi, we don't get Wi-Fi. So doing it all over data, it's probably going to be audio just because it'll be a bit easier. If there is Wi-Fi, I'll try doing a few bits on video, but I can't make you a promise I can't keep. Either way, you will hear from as many of the big players and as many extra people that I can possibly find as possible to go through what's happening, what's not happening, any great big bits of news that happen over the weekend. We'll comment on that as well. You will get as good coverage of the Coventry weekend as I can possibly give you, in the way that I have tried to make banners on the wall mean something to people. That's how we're going to go. After this weekend, what happens? Well, we will have a What's Current stream next Wednesday night, because we will kind of close bits and pieces. From a writing perspective, we will have the sort of traditional curtain down piece that I do that kind of officially ends the coverage of that season. And then I've got some decisions to make. And I'll kind of address things a little bit more as to what my initial ideas are next Wednesday night on the What's Current stream. And we'll kind of talk about it then. Because like I say, I've got some thoughts, but I kind of want to get this weekend out of the way first, if that's okay. Washington and Pittsburgh to miss the playoffs. Joined at the hip. Yep, that's fine. The Caps hopefully can find a way into... Caps are in a position where we could potentially get Connor Bedard, which would be mental. Be very, very crazy. Can you imagine if Ovechkin and Bedard on a line together? Almost be illegal. So sick to be 1 star in food hygiene. Be crazy, wouldn't it? But yeah, lots of moving parts, of course, as well. Very, very interesting. I know at some stage Ben and I are going to put our heads together and we'll do a sort of an end of season review for 0 pucks given, which is the plan. We do actually need to figure out when we're going to do that, Ben. So let's do that. But that'll be a lot of fun when we can get around to doing it. Just double checking. Actually, that is the one other bit of news that we do very, very briefly need to touch on, albeit a very, very sad bit of news that, of course, was announced overnight. Former Dallas star and former Belfast Giant Ray Sawada tragically passing away at the age of 38 last night. Was playing in a rec game. He's now a firefighter in his native Burnaby, British Columbia in Canada, and unfortunately taken ill and unfortunately passed away. 38 years old, is the same age that I am, and the fact that has happened is terrifying and very, very sad as well. So sending our thoughts to his family and what's going on there. Obviously as well, some news from Joey Ratz, the former Coventry Blaze forward. Of course, he was diagnosed with testicular cancer. He is on the road to recoveries. If you look around the GoFundMe, if you're in a position and want to contribute to that, you still can do, because obviously recovering from cancer in America is not a cheap thing, because America are mental and think socialized healthcare is such a bad thing that people should go bankrupt instead. But yeah, so bit of sad news and a bit of good news there as well. Any Stretmore Silent fans in the chat? I'm after any for next one of each for next week. Yeah, I mean definitely do. Obviously, if you also Ben's 0 pucks given is obviously on YouTube as well. So go check out some of the bits and pieces from the South One weekend if you're gonna want to hear for some different voices. Ben Painter, Alex Murray, Brandon Miles, who's chatted to a few people over the course of the weekend. So like I say, if you don't watch South One on the regular and you want to kind of see some different stuff, go check out what Ben does. All you lose is time, and you gain experience, and you get to hear from some people you don't always hear from, which is always really, really good. Likely Zegras and Bedard in Anaheim, which is equally disgusting. That will be insane. That would be crazy. Right, either way, 6-2 final score confirmed there. GB defeats Serbia, which is great to see. Well done to the under-18s there. Who's in goal? Is Tasadri in goal, or have they given somebody else have they given him a rest tonight? Did Luca get the start again? Oh, he did. Lucas played again. Good for him. Very interesting young lad. I'm going to try and have a chat with Luca Tasadri at some stage over the course of the summer, but I do kind of want to do him and Tyler together, so I'm going to let the season pass and let Luca get back from Worlds, and maybe we'll try and make that happen. Right, final call, everybody. Last call for questions, comments, anything else anybody wants to chuck in before we call time here. Yeah, Luca is in there. I've just seen that. With his jet black pad setup as well. It's pretty great, which looks very, very slick. There's a question, actually. Does he stay in Chelmsford this year? I'd hope for Luca's sake he's on a two-way. Interesting to see what happens with the Raiders actually for next season. Do Ethan James and Brad Winterbank both stay, because Luca's got to be looking for around the way. You know what comes to the Solway game? No. I've not been asked, not been spoken to about it. Drop the puck are usually lurking around. I still want to do it. Still love to have the opportunity to do it if someone is brave enough to let me have a go. I think it'd be massive. It'd be really, really cool to do. And like I keep blowing my own trumpet for this one. So someone give me a shot. Someone give me a chance. I'll have a good laugh about it, if nothing else. Right, anyway, it's 9:20, one of our longer shows for quite some time. We will call it there. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, your number one source for all things related, well, for the Basingstoke Bison, because we ain't gone. We're still here. But also as well for bits and pieces to do with the National League. There'll be stuff over the summer about player comings, player goings. Where will all of these Bison players go? Well, we'll have a talk about it. And for you guys who are getting somebody new for your roster, who are you getting? We'll certainly be looking at that. Also there is our Hockey Stories series, long form pieces that go from hockey history up to the present day, from the 19th century to the present day. Players, referees, we do hockey history behind the Iron Wall, through war and back again, and all those kind of great bits. There's also the back catalogue of the old BOTW podcast. That's there, as is all that you need to know about Dice Hockey, our tabletop ice hockey simulation game that you can download for free, and you can play easily in your house with bits and pieces you can find around your house. All I ask is if you have a go at Dice Hockey and you enjoy it, please do consider donating some money to Parkinson's UK. My dad has Parkinson's. Parkinson's sucks, and it'd be really great to get some money towards research for finding a cure for it. Facebook, but like I said, all of that is there. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Facebook.com/bannersonthewall. If you like getting your news bits and pieces through your Facebook feed, then make sure you go over and like the page there. Slowly growing, a little bit of a way behind the Twitter page, but it's slowly growing there. But every piece that goes on the website and a few other bits and pieces as well go on to facebook.com/bannersonthewall. Twitter @bannersotw. That's kind of the best place to kind of keep up with what I'm up to at the moment, both writing, other bits and pieces that are kind of going on, and a bit of rolling commentary about what's happening with hockey from the NHL and around the world. Yes, I am talking a lot more about Australian hockey. Yes, I'm excited for the season to start. It starts Saturday in Australia, so I'm looking forward to hopefully waking up in my mate's house and watching some on his telly, if he'll let me. But yeah, @BannersOTW, and also that's the place where you'll probably be the first place to see the link for this. Is you are here live on YouTube, youtube.com. It's @BannersOnTheWall. We are here. Make sure you hit subscribe. like the video, share bits and pieces out. Like I say, we are here for at least another week, and then we'll kind of figure out what we do with the What's Current stream over the summer. But the What's Current stream, the only show to cover all 5 divisions of the national of the NHL structure, and not going anywhere for next season. The What's Current stream will be back in September as an absolute minimum, but we'll definitely try and pop up over the summer a little bit as well. But there we are. We are very nearly there. The curtain comes down on the 2022-2023 National Ice Hockey League season this Sunday. Saturday, Division 2 finally finishes with the North 2 Cup being decided, and then we have the National Division 1 final and the National Player final on Sunday at the Coventry Skydome. Who takes it? Who will be the hero? Who might be the villain? A lot remains to be seen. Solway and Streatham, the immovable object, the unstoppable force, meet again. Redemption or repeat? Will Leeds do the double? Will Sheffield go back to back? Will Telford finally get over their hump when it comes to the playoff final? Will the Raiders spring a surprise? There is a lot to be decided this weekend, and I intend to take you through it every step of the way. Thank you for joining us this week. Be happy. And if you can't be happy, then please do your best to be safe. As my friend Scotty Woods would say, take care of yourself and somebody else. For bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, this is Anthony Russell saying stay safe and so long. Till next time. And here's to you, Basingstoke. Thank you for everything.